everybody. Welcome back to the channel.
Hey guys, if you don't mind, we're really trying to give you guys some good information, so please hit the like button, please hit subscribe, anything else that Justin needs you to do.
They'll love this like YouTube social media formula. You can just Google like how to gain followers, and then there we go, right?
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, share it with all your friends. If you don't have any friends, go make friends and share it with them. No, so we got a good one. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens when a physical therapist gets hurt. So you know that we are either active or pretend to be active. We like to try and do different things and stay out and about. And then John does stuff too, right?
Hamstring.
We can link up above to John's initial injury, dancing for his wedding. And so we have a good story about that.
Pretty good dance.
But so Meg has been injured going on a little bit longer than she's proud of. And her father has encouraged her to seek other advice outside of the advice that we have been giving her. But so Meg wrote a blog, which we'll link to down below, kind of talking about the process of being injured. But people always ask us what happens when we get hurt and how do we deal with it. And so that's what we're going to talk about this week. So Meg, let's hear your story.
Yeah, so I think that personally, I'm one of the worst PT patients, personally. I mean, I've actually been a patient of yours before.
You have.
I did what you said to do.
She got better.
And I did get better. However, I think that sometimes because I know what I could do to help, myself get better, that I maybe delay it a little bit longer than I should. So I've been hurt since about started probably in August of last year.
To be clear, it is now.
It is February?
February?
Question mark.
So it started with, just pretty typical what felt like plantar fasciitis pain that I've had before. And, I always put it, to the side, and I was like, I can treat it later. I can do the exercises later, which is not what we recommend.
Do as we say, not as we do.
Yes, do as we say, not as we do. And then it just continued to get worse and worse and worse. Running, I was still running and exercising and doing everything like that. And it got worse to the point where after a run, I couldn't walk in the afternoon. So I self-treated, did my exercises, got my foot stronger, did all that. It wasn't really getting much better. So I looked to Justin and I asked you in December?
It was before Christmas.
December-ish.
Yeah.
I would have been her first choice, but Justin's just closer.
Naturally,
yeah. Right. So I talked with Justin. He gave me some ideas for some other exercises. In the meantime, I decided I had stopped running for a while, so I decided to go back to running because I'm like, well, I'm not getting better without running, so I may as well go back to running. And I went back to running a little bit, walking, and it actually felt better. So we tried that. I tried some of the exercises that Justin suggested. It was very slow. So then a couple weeks ago, end of January, I brought it up to Justin again. And so then we spent the entire day in between patients talking about, well, could it be this? Could it be that? And then we spent an hour of our team meeting talking with John.
First I'd heard about it.
First time he's heard about it. Trying to figure out any other solutions. So long story short,
John was no help.
John was no help. No, Justin and I and John, we all sort of agreed on what my course of action should be. It's getting a little bit better.
Okay.
It's not healed. It's getting better. It's just taking a very, very long time. And so I wrote a blog about this just because I know that it's something that a lot of people go through. A lot of our patients go through this, and a lot of people in general go through this, a very long injury process that seems like it's just not getting better. So I wrote a blog about trusting the process and trusting, that there are going to be ups and downs in your rehab journey, and sometimes you got to just go with it and look to the small things that you are noticing are getting better. So like, for example, in October, I couldn't walk. Like I couldn't walk without turning my foot sideways. Then, by November, I could walk a little bit. Now here, in February, I can walk back to normal again, which is good, but I still have pain. So you have to look at it, day to day, week to week. The small improvements, they count, they're important. Just because you're not feeling 100% better doesn't mean you aren't improving. So do you have any other stories or anything like that about trusting the process?
Yeah, it's I also think it's important to remember what Meg said is important. Peaks and valleys. There are always going to be peaks and valleys as long as you're trending upward in the long term. I've also tried to get patients with certain pathologies and injuries to start looking at week to week, especially with their exercise. They say, I didn't get this exercise in this week. I'm like, you know what, time out. If we're looking at getting stronger, and most of what we do is strength, a typical strength block for an athlete, if you're talking about professional sports or collegiate, is 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the season. And so I'd almost rather you make sure you're consistent over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. Don't look at a week snapshot. It's almost a little, too soon. So you get really stressed out doing that. So look to the small victories.
Mm-hmm.
And something like the foot, I've had countless patients like this. The foot's really tough to get better. It's the only interface with the ground. It's not as easy to rest your foot as it is to my wrist is hurt or my elbow or my shoulder. I'm just not going to do that. Or even your knee, even though you walk around, unless you found a way to levitate and fly, which would be awesome.
One wheel.
then that's wrist injuries. So, the foot is really tough at times. And so just one of what we do is manage a lot of expectations. So I think it's a good chance to learn what is the actual timeline going to be, and can you still run? She couldn't run in the fall, and now she's back to running. That's a great testament to the fact that you have to stay active. Keep pushing the throttle down a little bit, but as long as it's within your tolerance.
Yeah. I also think it's important to know that it's not always, as much as we want to pretend to know everything and get it right the first time, all the time, it's not always super cut and dry. And a lot of times it's sort of like a detective process where it's if you watch those, on Law and Order, it's never the first suspect that they figured. It's always the guy they talked to after and ignored and then went back to. And
right.
There's a formula for that. You could usually figure it out. But it's important to know that, when you have something going on, it's not always, okay, this is what we think it is. This is how we're going to go about it. And then we just sort of continue down that road no matter what. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the treatment is also part of the diagnostic process. And you're oh, all right, well, if it was plantar fasciitis, we would have expected these things to do this, but it's actually, this one's making it better and this one's making it worse, so you feel it differently. And so then you start to change your diagnosis a little bit and you start to change your treatment protocol with it. And so that's why sometimes I think people, they'll wonder either why is this taking so long or why are you asking me so many questions about how different things feel. And there's not always a right or a wrong answer. It's more about we're trying to gauge where you are and what you're getting from each thing.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, one of the reasons that we've gotten away from sometimes very specific diagnoses where it's you've got knee pain, or you've got foot and ankle pain because nothing in your body happens in isolation. So many systems and structures are moving and working together at the same time. If you look at the foot and the ankle, you have 30 plus muscles and joints down there. So nothing works in isolation. Sometimes just saying, we got foot pain, we're going to treat it because you're going to experience different things is so much better than somebody saying, well, what's wrong with me? Well, this specific structure with the edge, I don't know, sometimes it gets oversimplified, which complicates it.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes, especially with these longer term injuries where you're dealing with an injury process for a long time, especially in my case where it is my foot, like John said, I'm on it all the time because I have to walk and I have to move. I can't get off of it. Because I was moving and walking a little bit differently for so long, that could have contributed to some of these differences in the presentation that we're seeing now compared to what I was experiencing back in August and in the fall, which could explain why I react differently to running now than I did back then, and why I react differently to certain exercises now than I did back then. So knowing that it's sort of it is like solving a puzzle, or we have to some things that worked for some person might not work exactly the same for you, even though you're presenting with similar symptoms or you have similar pains. So understanding that is important because what worked for your friend might not work for you, and so trusting yourself, trusting, whoever's working with you, your PT, your medical team, that they always are looking out for you, and they're trying to give you the best exercise or treatment plan for whatever they see is going on. Trust it for the long term, not just it still hurts 3 days after you had PT. I'm never going back there again. Something like that. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I know. Like I've had people before who will come in for one thing, and if they get better really quickly, I always sort of warn them that is generally not the way it works, so that you're like setting them up for the proper expectation for things that are gonna come, going on. I always tell the story. I had a guy who came in for vertigo, and depending on what kind of vertigo you have, it can be like a really immediate fix. And he was walking out and was just kind of like, "That's amazing, I'm all better," And the poor guy who was like going to be my next patient coming in, who had been coming for a couple of months for a lower back pain thing, and he was kind of like looking at me like, "Hey, what are you holding out on me for, man?" I told him I like the other guy better, and then we just kind of kept going. But everything is different, and everyone's going to heal at a different rate. But I think it's important to understand the process of it, and to also know that we're not immune to it, too, and that we don't always do the right thing. So there's a lot of do as I say, not as I do that goes on.
A whole lot of it.
Yeah. I kind of agree with what Meg was saying, where it's almost like you get so much less threatened by what's going on because you understand it, you know what it is, that you then are sort of complacent about it. And it's sort of like, I know the answer to that, and I'll get around to doing something when I have the time to. And that's one of the things that we want to preach to get everybody else to avoid doing. And so the earlier on you attack these problems, the easier they are to fix, Meg.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I said don't do as I do.
Yeah.
Right? Not a good example, but I'm doing all my exercises now.
There you go.
Yes.
So if you have any questions, you have questions for Meg about the blog, we'll link the blog down below. Go ahead, you can comment down below here, and we'll see you back here next time.